It's the Daily Dog.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Daily Doug. I am thankful that you are joining me today. Recently, I had the opportunity to have a pretty wide ranging conversation with Steve Hogarth, the lead singer of the band Marillion. I am a newcomer to Marillion. I have listened to some of their work, and as I listen to more of what they have recorded and provided us with, I've become quite a fan. And so it was quite a treat to chat with Steve for about 45 minutes, actually. We talked about his early influences, his approach to writing lyrics and songwriting, and how that's evolved over the years. And also about some of his activism and support for humanitarian causes and how that manifests itself in the songs that he writes. We, of course, dive into the new album, An Hour Before It's Dark, and we also talk about the band's upcoming live concert weekend in Poland, given what's going on currently in Eastern Europe. So it is a very, I think, interesting conversation worth your time, and I am happy to share it with you today. So here is my conversation with Steve Hogarth. Greetings.
Well,
Hi there.
how are you? Hello, Doug.
It's good to see you.
And you?
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to answer a few questions today. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I've seen some of your podcasts and enjoyed them.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Did you see any of the ones I did from of Marillion's music?
I did. I saw the one you did, your reaction to Fear, which
We're going to talk about that one. We're going to talk about that one. We'll see if I got it right. It's wonderful music, and so I appreciate you giving a YouTuber like me a little bit of time to chat. I've been on my channel going through a lot of this music that, as a classically trained composer, I had sort of gone past. I was adjacent to and never really listened to. So it's been really fun to dive into this really excellent music that I've been missing out on. So that's kind of the point of my particular channel. But you know, I've been doing among other bands, I've been listening to some of Marillion, and I've been very much intrigued with what y'all are doing. So it's awesome, great stuff. So all right, I like to start when we do these because origin story is interesting to me. So what are your remembrances as a kid when you were drawn to music? Like, who were some of your early influences? Like when you think back to like the music you were grooving with as a kid, what were you listening to?
Oh, Beatles for sure. You know, like the rest of the kids of my generation, I suppose.
Yeah.
The Beatles knocked me over. You know, when I was, I think I was 6 or 7. My mom and dad bought me a little record player for Christmas, and they bought me "She Loves You" and "Can't Buy Me Love." And I think round about the same time as I got those, I got "Not Fade Away" by the Rolling Stones, and "It's Not Unusual" by Tom Jones.
Not unusual to be loved by Tom Jones, man.
The voice. Stuff. Yeah, and then the Kinks followed fairly hot on the heels of all of that. Tired of Waiting for You by the Kinks. But it was really Beatles all the way down the line for me. That was my principal, you know, go-to listening. I remember first hearing. I mean, I had. It was different in America, but in England, the first album was "Please Please Me." The second one was called "With the Beatles," which I think was called "Meet the Beatles" in the States, wasn't it?
Right.
And then I kind of missed. Oh, and then there was "Help." Oh, "Hard Day's Night" and "Help."
Right.
I had all of those, and then I'm sort of missed out on Beatles for Sale. But then I heard, you know, then I got Revolver. So I just made that journey with the Fab Four, really, and I'll never forget first getting hold of Abbey Road and playing that on my little record player again and again and again and
it's
again.
An amazing album. It's one you can listen to like hundreds of times and not get tired of.
Yeah,
sure.
that was them inventing progressive rock music on side 2. You know, they did that first as well. They did everything first.
They kind of did. Did you see the Get Back documentary that came out? What'd you think of it?
I loved every moment of it. Absolutely loved it.
It was amazing to me that that film footage exists and that it's been there for so long. You know, there was that part, I think it was in the second portion of that where you know, John and Paul are going off to have a private conversation, and yet it's not private. I can't believe we're hearing
with the microphone in the fruit bowl. Yeah,
right. It's amazing. You know, I loved every minute of that documentary because I'm interested in process and seeing kind of how the sausage gets made is it's different for every group. Obviously, I was shocked at how informal they were, even while the recording was actually going. It's you know, the fact that Yoko was so close to John, while I mean, yes, that's the take. I'm hearing that right, and she's right there. It just blew my mind. Absolutely blew my mind.
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, it kind of rewrote history a little bit as well, because the original Let It Be movie kind of was edited and cut together in such a way that to emphasize the tension and, oh, here they are and they're going to split up and all of this. Whereas this one, there was hardly any tension at all. I mean, I would, you know, as our producer Mike said to me, I would kill. He said, I've done Christian rock bands with a worse vibe in the studio than they had. And he's not joking.
Right.
You know, the vibe was amazing. And Lennon was just clowning around all of the time, you know, and McCartney's going, I've got a feeling. And Lennon's going, I bet you have, you dirty bastard, you know, down the microphone at the same time during the take. I just thought that's so cool, you know, that's such a vibe going. And
I think Billy Preston, after watching that, Billy really did kind of provide the prism for them to kind of, okay, let's have some fun and play some music. You know, I think his a contribution to that whole process can't be glossed over for sure.
No, he was so positive and so humble, and such a great player.
For sure.
And I think they all felt like, you know, they'd better tighten everything up a bit for him as well. You know, Billy's.
Yeah. Let's not embarrass ourselves in front of the guest player, shall we? You know.
Exactly.
Well, what I want to do today is take a few minutes to run through some of the songs that I have heard from Marillion, and then I want to talk a little bit about the new album that is out. So, as I got introduced to the band, my very first the episode of my podcast that you saw on the New Kings was the very first song from Marillion that I ever heard. And I was struck with the pointedness of the lyric, juxtaposed with sometimes that tenderhearted or that melancholy sort of delivery. If I'm not mistaken, you wrote the lyrics to this, yes?
Yeah, I've written all the lyrics since 1999, more or less.
So who are the New Kings? Who are we talking about? Did I get it right?
Yeah, of course. I think you were spot on, really. There was a time when I don't know, kings and governments, for that matter, had the power and were in charge of us. And over the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years, all of that has been compromised by huge money. And I mean, it's interesting how topical the whole thing has become, because now it's all come home to roost.
Yeah.
And now here in England, everybody's asking questions like how could our democracy have become so compromised by Russian money? How could the City of London being allowed to launder money that was the proceeds of gangsterism and crime for so long? And of course the answer is there was so much of it. And you know, whilst you can be put in prison for robbing a post office, if you take 30 billion off someone, you tend to get away scot-free because some fish are too big to fry. And we see that time and time again. So the New Kings was about you know, the members of our government that has squirreled large sums of money away themselves offshore. Tony, not Anthony, suitably masked, you know, was Tony Blair. I could go on and on.
Yeah.
But then I said, you know, we are the New Kings, we had the keys to old Russia's locked doors. Because, of course, in 1989, there wasn't any money in Russia.
Right.
There wasn't wealth. There was a communist system, which then fell apart. The Berlin Wall came down and certain characters just ran off with it all.
Right.
And the people who had the keys to the locked doors were the self-same people who were terrorizing the public under communism, the Politburo, the KGB. It was all those characters who, because they were the only people as well who could or were allowed to think for themselves. You'd got an entire nation of people who were actively discouraged from thinking for themselves, and if they did, were punished for it. And so that produced a kind of zombified country.
Right. Who's really in charge?
With one or two very, very sharp characters, you know, that surprise, took over everything when it fell over. So the keys to Russia's locked doors, and, you know, that refers to the oligarchs.
Here on the corporation's top floor, if you cross us, we'll buy you and you can retire.
The children set up for life. Think about it.
Yeah.
So that's just the way big money has worked and continues to work. And
I happen to share most of the same observations as you. It just bowled me over that someone was bold enough to actually say it that pointedly in a lyric. I was like, yes.
Well,
thank you.
You know, Marillion are very free. You know, we live in a free country, but we're also free of the music business because we abandoned the music business a couple of decades ago, and we found another way of operating, which has an awful lot to do with the fans. We invented the notion and the concept of a pre-order. Every pre-order that's ever happened we basically did it first, and so that made us free because we didn't need record companies anymore. We could sell our next album, the one we hadn't even recorded yet, to our fans who'd be more than happy to buy it, and so we'd end up with large sums of money in the bank without having to sign anything to record labels. And at the same time,
artistic freedom
and political freedom. You know, nobody's whispering in my ear saying, "Are you sure you want to say that? Are you sure that's all right? You know, it's not going to get on the radio." Well, I've got nothing to fear about that because the radio never fucking plays us anyway.
Sure.
So I don't need to worry about whether we get on the radio or not. And so in that sense, I can open my mouth and say exactly what I feel. It doesn't mean people have to agree with it. It doesn't mean I'm preaching to them. It just means I'm saying, think about this.
Well, it it definitely comes off as topical, and like we know that we're getting the real scoop from you, you know. So it's an amazing record, it really is, and I really grooved with it. The next thing that I heard, even I grooved even more with, because the next thing that I heard was Estonia from the Friends with the Orchestra album.
Yeah.
And so this one was from 2019, and there's, I think, 9 reorchestrated or reimagined Marillion songs. So what prompted the desire then to go back to previous tunes rather than to put out a new material?
Well, first of all, we write extremely slowly, and so to have written another album would have taken a lot of time. We'd taken up with that with those 6 orchestral players. I ran into Nicole, who was the leader of the quartet in Sweden. There's a band in Sweden called Isildur Spain, and it's a really old progressive rock band from the 70s who've now kind of split up because they all teach now. They don't actually function as a band, but once a year they do a show, and they all, you know, they all come from their various college posts and get together and rehearse, and they do a show, and they always invite who they consider to be luminaries from the world of progressive rock to join them in the show. And so they'll invite Tony Levin, Peter Gabriel's guitar player,
Sure.
King bassist, King Crimson,
Right.
and they invited David Rhodes, and they invited David Torn, who played guitar with David Bowie, and various characters. And they invited my mate, Richard Barbieri, who is in a band called Japan, a synthesizer player. And I'd been working with Richard, and he invited me. So then I went as well. And I got to meet them, and cut a long story short, I then ended up co-writing an album for them. I wrote all the words for an album they released a year and a half ago.
Cool.
And where am I going with this? What was the question? Oh, yes. So this band is like a chamber rock band. They're not just a band. They've got a brass section. They've got percussionists. They've got 2 drummers, 3 bass players, God knows how many guitarists, and they've got a string quartet. And so I'd worked with them, and I was talking to Nicole from the quartet in a bit of downtime, and she said, "Oh, well, I've got this other quartet in Belgium, and if, you know, we're looking to try and get into doing some rock and roll." So I said, oh, let me have your number. And
Sure.
So then we came to arrange to how did it work? I think we took the quartet out on the road towards the end of the Fear tour, and we did a show at the Albert Hall, where in London, where we played Fear, and we had a quartet, a French horn player and a flautist, the 6. And that worked wonderfully. And our producer, Mike, arranged the parts because none of us read music. And so after that, we really felt inclined to make we made a live album of that. And then we felt really driven to try and make a proper record in a recording studio with them, and revisit some of our catalog, to rework it in that way. And Estonia came out of that session.
That's cool.
And I wrote Estonia after I've had some very strange things happen in my life, a lot of coincidences, and I've ended up meeting extraordinary people by pure chance. I got to know Neil Armstrong, and I got to know a chap called Donald Campbell, who was the world water speed record holder in the 60s in England, and I ended up singing at his funeral. And but I got on a plane to come back from Stockholm in the 90s. I'd been doing some promotion for one of our albums, and I was sat on one side of the aisle from a guy who was sitting on the other side of the aisle who kept making eye contact with me and seemed determined to talk to me. And it turned out that he was the only English survivor of the Estonia tragedy, and he'd spent 5 hours in the sea.
I had read that you met him, and it was on a plane. So it was just a happenstance on a plane.
Pure chance.
I'll be damned.
And we talked all the way, the entire journey from Sweden back to England. And he gave me a moment by moment account of everything that happened. And I was in tears listening to it. It was really moving. So many people lost their lives. And as a consequence of that meeting, he asked if we would be into doing a little charity show in Henley-on-Thames to try and raise some money for the bereaved, because the people in Estonia who were bereaved not only lost, say, their husbands and fathers, but they lost their only means of income, because there is no welfare state. There's nothing. Yeah. So if you lose the guy that earns the money, you're screwed, as well as grieving.
Wow.
And so we did a little show, and I wrote Estonia for that show as well. I mean, we normally write extremely slowly, but Estonia came together really quickly. And that's where that song came from.
Do you consider With Friends from the Orchestra a kind of greatest hits album, or just sort of one of those lovely little things that just happen in the course of a career?
Yeah, the latter, really. Just an experiment, something we wanted to try and do, with some really sublime moments on it. I think Estonia is really sublime, and I think the space is sublime as well.
It's wonderfully recorded. That was at Peter's.
We recorded that Real World. Yeah.
Okay.
We often go there when we've got everything in one piece. We record a lot of our stuff in our own studio, which I was there all day today, screaming my head off, rehearsing, because we've got some shows coming up, and we're going to perform the whole of the new album in a couple of weeks' time.
I saw that. I wanted to end with that for sure, because I have a couple questions about that. But if you don't mind, let's talk about the new album, An Hour Before It's Dark, the 20th studio album from Marillion. It was released earlier this month, and it's charting quite well. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, we're in shock.
Yeah. So the music fans still know that you're around, even if you've gone around the music industry, for sure. The first track that I heard was the first track on the album, on that one, Be Hard on Yourself. I actually reviewed that one on my channel. And just like the New Kings, I was drawn to the humanity in the lyrics, but here's the thing. Normally, in a circumstance where someone is trying to heal or move forward or change their behavior, I've been told, you need to be easy on yourself. You need to just forgive yourself so you can move forward. And so when I heard Be Hard on Yourself, I'm like, okay, they're calling us out. But yet it was like tough love, because the music seems to comfort us while you're singing about some pretty dire things. Did the lyrics come first? Does the music come first? Do they kind of happen at the same time? Talk about the process a little bit.
Usually words. I've got words all over the place. They're all in the laptop now. But there's words I've written over the years, some that have never been used or seen the light of day. And then there are things that come to me in flashes, not nearly often enough, I must say. I'm not inspired that often. And yet, whenever we come around to work, to try and write a new album. I've always got a bit rather more than I thought I had, which is always nice. Be Hard on Yourself, of course, was just a reflection of the climate crisis and the fact that we are going to have to make some very tough decisions. Everybody knows there's a climate, apart from Donald Trump, knows there's a climate crisis, and knows that it's urgent.
Yeah.
And yet we wake up in the morning and the first thing we think isn't, shit, what are we going to do about the planet? It's, right, I could really do with a cup of coffee. That's what we think. And in that sense, our priorities are all wrong, because we have got an existential problem.
Sure.
And of course, that's going to be elbowed sideways again because Vladimir Putin's presented us all with an even bigger one. But at the point I was writing An Hour Before It's Dark, the thing that was front and center of my world was the climate crisis and the pandemic.
Yeah.
And of course, in my head, the pandemic is just a symptom of the climate crisis. The two are one and the same. They're a consequence of the fact that we don't live in tune with nature. We've lived at odds with nature for a long time, and some of us for so long that we think we're actually invincible and immune to it, which is ludicrous, because of course we're not. And so the pandemic, I didn't want to write about the pandemic. I've said this time and time again. I've done so many interviews, but I had no intention of writing about the pandemic. In fact, I thought it was a mistake because I thought no one's going to want to hear about it, and everybody under the sun is going to be writing about it. And I think I was wrong on both fronts, because I don't think, as it turns out, not too many artists have really written about it. And people seem ready to hear about it, provided provided what they hear is truthful and is honest and is a reflection, or a kind of felt reflection of where we've all been. And I think what's knocked people sideways with this record is the fact that I've tried to feel the pandemic and feel the climate crisis, and and say, this is where we've all been. Isn't it strange? Isn't it odd that you can't throw your arms around someone without risking killing them?
That lyric,
how weird is that?
Lyric just killed me, by the way. I put my arms around her and I killed her with love, from Murder Machines. It just wrecked me. I'm like, the thing that I was thinking during the pandemic was, I can't wait to hear how all of our musical heroes are going to synthesize the human aspect of what we just went through, so we can be cathartic together. So what these lyrics have done, and what this music has done, is allowed us that outlet. So I can think of, I think the standpoint of, I don't want to really go that. People have been through it. They don't want to hear it anymore. Let's move, but we really do need to process what we just went through. And by the same
token, it was impossible not to write about it, because that was my reality at the time. And to not have written about it would have been to write something utterly superficial and meaningless. And not only am I incapable of that, but I've sort of boxed myself into a corner over the years where it would feel cheap if I did it. I every time we make a new record, I have to go digging around inside my flesh for it. And it's not always nice to have to do that, but that's kind of what people expect of me now. And it's what I expect of myself. And any less than that feels like, just feels shameful almost. I'm 65 as well now, and I've written all the love songs I'm likely to write. I'm not at that point in my life anymore where I'm eaten up with heartache over some woman or other.
That's interesting. It's
I'm
interesting.
in another place. And so
Yeah.
what do people write about? If they want to write something honest and true, they start to write about the world and what they're seeing, and they start to write about injustice, or I have. I've always been inspired by injustice, whether on a tiny personal level or on a social level or a big political level. It's always been injustice that's made me put pen to paper.
Amazing. During the pandemic, as a singer, I'm also a trained vocalist, and I also direct choirs and write choir music. And a bunch of my friends were just apoplectic. They're like, so the idea of singing, the act of singing, becoming a potentially dangerous activity during the pandemic. What kind of emotional turmoil did that have on you? Do you think I'm ever going to be able to when we'll be able to do this again? Will it be okay? And like the thing that one of the things that you're known for becomes potentially dangerous, right? Because that's what happens when you sing.
Yeah, I mean, the prospect of, Mike came to us right at the beginning of the process for writing An Hour Before It's Dark, and he said, we can't let anything go out. We can't let anything onto this album that isn't strong enough to have been on fear. So that became the mission statement from word go. And I was and am very proud of Fear. So the prospect of us beating it or equaling it sent me into a terrified state on its own. And so I went to the doctors and I got prescribed with antidepressants. And so I've taken sertraline every day to be able to make this record. And consequently, when you say, were you disturbed or freaked out at the prospect of not knowing how long it'd be before you could sing again in public? I think the honest answer is, if I hadn't been on the drugs, I probably would have been. But I was so
I started on antidepressants too, for the first time in my life during the pandemic. I was like, I'm going to need a little bit of help to get. It's a little traumatic around here.
I think that's wise of you, frankly, and I think, it's a terrible thing to say, but I think it's the way to go. It's done me the world of good, because I was always tense, and I'm a warrior, and I was always worrying, and I was always uptight, and it's not done me any harm at all to relax and just be able to let things be if I can't change them.
Have you always been really eager to share some of your societal, social, humanitarian concerns in your lyrics? Is that something that's been with you throughout your career?
Yeah, really, from word go. Way back. I wasn't that conscious of it, and then a couple of years ago, I was on tour in South America, and I was invited to a university in Buenos Aires, where they'd made this presentation of all the things I'd written that dealt with social issues. And they had them all on the screen when they'd married them together with some film footage. And I sat there and I'm thinking to myself, I had no idea I'd written this many, that I was this kind of a writer.
Yeah.
But it was only really when I saw them all end to end that I realized perhaps just how much I'd done that over the years. First album was first album with Marillion, I had a song called Easter, which I wrote about the troubles in Northern Ireland. So there's been something really on probably on just about every record that's touched on whatever I've decided was unjust at the time. I think if you're in a fortunate position of being able to open your mouth and a lot of people listen, then the least you can do is try and say something important and then make the world a better place if you can while you're at it.
Here. It's what draws me to Marillion's music for sure. Besides the sound of it, which is excellent. Lastly, I noticed y'all are going to be touring the UK and Europe this coming fall. But I saw a listing for this concert, I think April 8th in Poland. And with all that's going on right now in Eastern Europe, how are you and the band approaching that performance?
I'm going to paint my fingernails blue and yellow for the show. And it's going to be strange to be there. It's going to be beautiful, but it's going to be emotional. It's going to be really emotional because you know, those guys are on the front line. I think they've had 2 million refugees come into Poland now, and they haven't built one camp because the Polish people have taken them into their homes.
Amazing.
Which is amazing. And I find that really moving.
Will the set list be primarily from the new album?
Well, what this is that we're about to do, and it's something we've done quite a lot now over the years, we do 3-night shows with 3 completely different set lists, each over 2 hours, 2.25 hours long. So we basically got 7 hours of music ready to go.
That's awesome.
That's mental. Yeah, I know.
If I could get to Poland, I'd be there.
No one in their right mind would take that on, but we have. And
Why
so
not?
the Friday is so much to remember. You know, we don't read, we have to remember all of it. But the Friday night, we're going to play the Season's End album, and then we're going to play some select songs as well in the encores. We'll probably play Gaza as another example of a song that I wrote a few years ago from the standpoint of a child growing up in Gaza. Which again, you know, is one hell of a subject to take on. I had a lot of sleepless nights over that. And I had to make damn sure I could stand by every single word, because I knew I would get a lot of flack for it, and I got a fair amount. But I do stand by it, and I can stand by it. And it's not an anti-Jewish song, it's not an anti-Semitic song, but it is anti-State of Israel and State of Israel's foreign policy. Not anti-State of Israel in the sense that I've got a problem with Israel existing.
Anti-injustice, you know?
Yeah, the way the State of Israel has, in my opinion at least, overreacted to a perceived threat. Which hasn't helped. You know, peace won't come from standing on our necks. Was you know, a line out of there. But so we'll probably we're probably going to add Gaza and I think Neverland and a couple of others. And then on Saturday night we're going to play the whole of the new album, start to finish.
Cool.
Plus some other odds and sods. And then this time on Sunday, we're going to do something we've never done before, which is we're going to dedicate Sunday night to the band's up-tempo material, because we're not really known for our up-tempo balls out rockers, but we, you know, over 30 years you do knock the odd one or two out. So Sunday night is up-tempo night. So it's going to be quite a weekend. It's all sold out,
Will this be the
And
first time y'all have been on stage in a while?
well, we did a UK tour actually in November last year.
Okay.
And we just managed to sort of squeeze that in between two waves of COVID.
Right.
The Omicron thing bit just after we'd finished. So we were lucky. We just managed to slide that in and out. And this will be the first time we played this year, and it'll certainly be the first time we've played the new album. We did play Be Hard on Yourself live in November in the set, but that was the only one.
Awesome. Well, I really thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. I find the music quite intriguing and challenging from a human standpoint, and that's what I like in my art. So thanks for doing the work and for keeping at it. Do y'all have I know it's awful of me to ask this, but are y'all thinking of hey, what's the next album going to be, or is it like whenever it happens, it happens?
Yeah, I'd probably have a nervous breakdown on the spot if somebody asked me to write another one. I don't think I'll be able to look at that for at least 18 months. But no, the thing about our process is it is very natural. We write all the music by jamming and recording everything and then listening back. And there might be 10 seconds in 3 hours that we go, oh, what happened there? That was quite interesting.
Pick that out.
And that's how we work, and we
Cool.
do that. We
That's
end up
really
with
neat.
folders with little happy accidents in them, and they become the starting points then of the songs.
The happy accidents are where it is. That's relying on your instinct, and you're like, oh, what? Like, I'll be doing that. I'll be playing along. I'll be like, and I'll stop and look down at my hands and go, okay, what am I playing? That was really nice.
That's where it is, because
it is.
I mean, I think your hands always fall in a place, where you're comfortable, and so then there's a tendency to be samey. It's only the accidents that are where David Bowie once said, and I quote it all the time, you want to walk out into the sea to that place where your feet just don't quite touch, and that's the place you want to be. You want to be in that slightly uncomfortable place, and that's where the best creative impulses are.
In the deep end, but still relatively tethered. Yeah, I like that. I like that.
Not drowning, but not comfortable.
Right. That'll keep you dog paddling enough, and you'll find some way to survive for sure. So we can find y'all at Marillion.com. You've got stevehogarth.com. Are you on social media at all? People can find you.
Oh, Marillion, yes.
Yeah.
I'm not on it that much. I upload the occasional thing to Instagram, but
I saw you've got a podcast too.
Oh yeah, that keeps me extremely busy.
I didn't know about. So when I went to read in to get ready for the interview, I'm like, oh, look at all of these podcast episodes. I have some homework to do.
Oh, you should go. They're very funny because they're just me and another bloke talking rubbish, and it's good natured.
Sounds fun to me.
Good natured nonsense. And then in each one, I read. I published a couple of diaries. That was 91 to 97, and then 98 to 2014.
Wow.
Because I used to scribble a diary when I was on the road and around the world and everything. So I read a little bit from those in the middle of the podcast as well. So I'm hoping by degrees to be able to release an audio book of them at some point.
That sounds fun. Well, Steve Hogarth, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. Good luck on the upcoming tour and all the performances, and we'll be watching and cheering you on.
Well, we'll have to do it again. I could talk to you all day, man. I'd like to. So we should do it again.
Definitely. I'll be back in touch.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. You too. See ya.
Cheerio.
Cheerio.